Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another time with me here, here to pray. It's a noontime prayer, and we just usher ourselves into a time of prayer with the Word. And we'll be doing a study of the book of Daniel. We've been in chapter 1, and we've been on verse 6. Well, since last week. And this is our eighth delivery on verse 8, right? And we've been looking at just the first part of verse 8, which says that Daniel proposed in his heart, and we're trying to break down what that word means and all it pertains to us. Like, right, we looked at it, meaning it means that to make a decision, to make up your mind, right, to be resolute, to be determined. And we looked at several keynotes from that. First of all, for the fact that you can't receive anything from God, right, unless you're resolute. A double-minded man is unstable in all of his ways, right? We've looked at the fact that you're not going to make it to heaven, right, if you're not resolute about what you want. And later on, we'll look at some resolutions of Jonathan Edwards, right, in that regards, right? We looked at the fact that you can't make it to heaven, you can't even succeed in life, right? If you don't have a decision, a plan for what you want to do in 2022, right, you're not going to succeed by accident, right? We'll say that to not planning is planning to fail. You're either going to plan to succeed or you're going to not plan, then you're planning to fail, right? Planning, it's very important, pivotal to us making it in this life, right? We have Stephen Covey teaching us in his book that all things are created twice, right? In the mental faculty and in reality, right? That's same thing, right? In our walk with God, you have to want it and get it in your mind's eye to be able to come up it in reality. Same way faith works, right? What you cannot see your mind's eye, you can't have in reality. Faith comes from being able to see it your mind's eye, right? That's why the Bible says in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, it says that faith is the substance of things hoped for, right? Is what I have today that assures me that what I'm hoping for in the future is a reality, right? Welcome, my sister Beauty.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming along.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we're just looking at Daniel chapter 1, verse 8. I was just trying to quickly rehash some of the things we've learned so far. And I'm on keynote number 4. And I get to share this on WhatsApp soon and also on Facebook. Some of the notes we have. And I include these notes in all the YouTube recordings also. So something that you can catch up on if you want to. And we also looked at yesterday, especially, we looked at the fact that you can't worship God without your mind, right? I think we looked at that both yesterday and also on Friday. So our mind is not part of our worship. It's not true worship. We spent a while yesterday looking at the fact that God has some definite things He has told us about how to do church, right? And for as long as we don't do church the way God has told us to do church, we can't really call it a church, right? So we have a lot of buildings, congregations that call themselves church that in God's eyes, they're not church. Some of them are actually shrines. Some of them are temple of demons. Some of them are business houses, right? For it to be a church, it has to meet the standard that God has set forth in His Word, right? So if an organization is running that does not meet the criteria of the Word, it cannot be called a church in the true sense of it, right? In John 17, Jesus Christ prayed that separate them by the truth. Your word is truth. So for anything to be called a church, the house of God, it has to meet the word. It has to be in line with the truth, right? We also remember that when the church first started, even before we were called Christians, we were called people that belongs to that way. People that belongs to that way. So it's critical that we work in the way. If as long as we're not working in the way, we're truly not a church, right? Amen. As we're just talking about the fourth keynote we've taken down is the fact that there's no worship of God without an engagement of our mind. When our mind is not involved, we're truly not worshiping God. We cannot worship God without our mind. Our mind is our consciousness. Without our consciousness, we cannot worship God. Without our consciousness, we're dummies. God is a God who loves glory. You cannot give glory if you're a dummy. You cannot give glory if you're not conscious. Our mind is our consciousness. So that's why God says He wants us to worship Him with our consciousness, with the whole of our being. He says He's seeking for those that worship Him in spirit and in truth, in the fullness of consciousness, right? And yesterday we looked at different aspects of that. We said that there are set standards, set ways that God has given us as to what a church should be. Pretty much it needs to align with the Word of God. When our gathering is not aligned with the Word of God, we're not a church. We're something, but we're not a church, right? So we need to be careful that whatever we do, we're aligned to the Word of God. And remember, Jesus Christ says that'll be the differentiating factor at the end of the day. It's not going to be miracles. It's not going to be how many people that God saved through you. It's whether you did the will of God or not, right? And continuing that, I had some other scriptures I was going to look at. We'll see that in Matthew 22, verse 37 to 38, where it says that the first commandment is to love the Lord our God with all our heart, with all our soul, and with all our mind. Similar to that, we see in Mark 12:30, also repeats the same thing. The first commandment is that we love the Lord our God with all our heart, with all our soul, and with all our mind. It's even funny that the scriptures seem to separate out the mind from the soul. The mind is a part of the soul, but in a sense of emphasis, he's saying that unless we worship him with all of our soul, but specifically our mind also, right? And you see, they're also talking about our strength. We'll see the original of all of that in Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 5, where it was stated there, so that we shall love the Lord our God with all our heart, all our soul, and all our strength, right? So that's the way we worship God. That's when we're fullness, ourselves given and yielded to God. So when we don't do that, then we're foolish. We're not walking accurately. That's why in Galatians chapter 3, verse 1, Paul called the Galatians people foolish. He's called them foolish because they've allowed themselves to be deceived. They've allowed themselves to be taken away from the proper worship of God. They've allowed themselves to be taken away from a place where they were conscious and fully given to God, to a place where they were now obeying men's doctrines, men's dictate, whereby they were not fully given to God. Because the law doesn't bring you to a place where you fully yield to God. So we even see in the Old Testament, those that fully yield to God lived ahead of their time, right? We see David yielding to God, lived ahead of his time, so much so that some of the things in the law he did not obey. He did not walk in that. And Jesus Christ justified him in doing that. Jesus Christ goes and gives an example of David, that he and his men ate the bread that was not lawful for them to eat. It was for the priest, right? But we understand that the limitation of the law, it does not release you to fully worship God with the whole of your being. So those that lived even ahead of the law were even not obeying the fullness of the law, yet they were considered righteous before God, right? And I was just going to look at some quotes also that helps us define some of this. Sigmund Freud is a psychoanalyst who partnered with Carl Jung, talking about study of the mind and all of that, psychoanalysis. And he said that just as no one can be forced into belief, no one can be forced into unbelief. Whether you believe or you don't believe is an activity of the mind, right? You can either choose to believe or choose not to believe, right? There's no middle ground. Middle ground means you're not using your mind. Same thing, just like we say, you're either hot or cold. If you're not using your mind, you're in a place called being lukewarm. And God does not deal with that. God can handle lukewarm, cold. God can handle hot, but he cannot handle lukewarm. Right? God can handle belief and unbelief. Cannot handle someone that's sitting on the fence. Right? God help us all. Our time is up. I'm not going to keep you further. Anything you want to add? Question? Something I missed? Feel free. Atibanke, you have anything you want to add? Or Beauty?
Okay. It's okay.
It's okay. All right. Great. All right. So let me release you then. Have a great remaining of the afternoon. Hopefully see you tomorrow, God willing.
Amen.
All right. Have a good one. God bless.